He locked me in the basement. Yes, my own father-in-law. The man I was supposed to call Daddy after my wedding. He chained the door, left the lights off, and told me I wouldn't see daylight again if I dared speak a word to his son. I could still hear his words echoing in my head. If you tell my son, I swear I'll cancel this wedding and destroy you. No one will believe you anyway. And then the silence. No phone. No light. Just cold bricks, a dripping pipe in the corner, and the pounding of my heart. He came back every night, with threats, with wickedness, and with a look in his eyes that no girl should ever have to face. I counted the days, 1, 2, 3, and then I lost count. I thought I was going to die there in that cold basement, without my fiancé ever knowing what his father had done to me. But something happened on the 12th day that changed everything. Now let me tell you how it all started. I was 22 when I met Marcus. He was the kindest man I had ever known. He held doors open, prayed before meals, and always looked me in the eyes when we spoke. Our love was simple, beautiful, and fast. Within 6 months of dating, he asked me to marry him. Of course I said yes. Everyone was happy for us. Except his father. From the moment I met Mr. James, I knew something was off. He never smiled when I was around. He didn't shake my hand when I greeted him. First, I thought he just needed time. Maybe he wasn't used to the idea of Marcus getting married so soon. But the truth was much darker than that. One day, Marcus had to travel for a conference in Abuja. He'd be gone for 2 weeks. Before he left, he said, "Stay close to my family, baby. They're your family now, too." He hugged me so tight. I never imagined it would be the last warm thing I'd feel for days. The day after he left, Mr. James called and said he wanted to show me a surprise wedding gift he had prepared for us. I felt nervous, but I didn't want to seem disrespectful, so I went to the family house. He led me into the basement. That basement was nothing like I expected. The lights were dim. The walls were stained with moisture. There were boxes everywhere. He walked ahead of me and said, "It's just in the back." But when I stepped in fully, I heard the door slam behind me. Then the sound of a heavy bolt locking it shut. "Mr. James," called out. No answer. I ran to the door and banged on it, but it was no use. The basement was soundproof. I screamed until my voice cracked. I cried until my eyes swelled. And when I heard footsteps again, I thought I'd be rescued. But instead, the door opened slowly, and he stood there, holding a plate of food like I was some prisoner. "You will eat. You will sleep. And you will stay here," he said, with a calm voice that chilled me to the bone. "You're not going anywhere until Marcus returns. And if you say a word, even a whisper to him, I will cancel this wedding and make your life miserable." I didn't understand why he hated me so much. I begged. I told him I loved his son. I told him I just wanted to make Marcus happy. But every plea made him angrier. Each day he brought me food, just enough to keep me alive. Sometimes he would sit and talk, saying disgusting things about women, about power, about how men like him controlled everything. He never laid a hand on me in the worst way. But his words, his presence, it was like poison. I started to lose track of time. The light bulb overhead flickered now and then. My phone had no signal down there, and I was too scared to scream again. One day, I heard footsteps that were faster than usual. The door burst open. It wasn't Mr. James this time. It was his wife. "Dear Lord, what are you doing here?" she gasped when she saw me. I thought I'd be saved, but what she did next shook me even more. She closed the door behind her and sat down quietly. "Listen to me," she said. "I know you're confused. But if you love Marcus, truly love him, you'll keep quiet. You'll let this go. He's been through so much, and his father is very powerful. If you try to bring him down, you'll only hurt Marcus. And I won't let that happen." Tears rolled down my face. Even his mother was part of this? That night I didn't sleep. I just stared into the darkness and wondered what kind of family I was marrying into. Then came day 12. I woke up weak, barely able to stand. But I heard a sound I hadn't heard in days, a voice shouting Marcus's name. It was my best friend, Clara. Somehow she had found the house. And what happened next shook the entire family to its roots. "Marcus! Marcus! Are you inside?" I heard Clara's voice shouting from above. It was muffled through the walls and floor, but I knew it was her. For the first time in days, my heart beat fast, not from fear, but hope. I dragged myself to the basement door and began banging it with my fists, my voice weak but desperate. Clara! I'm down here. Clara, help me. I heard a pause. Then her voice again, this time closer, more urgent. Hello? Who said that? Is someone down there? My throat burned as I screamed again. Clara, it's me. It's me, Sarah. I'm locked in the basement. There was a loud banging upstairs, then the sound of a scuffle. A man's voice, Marcus shouted. Dad, what's going on? What do you mean no one is here? Where's Sarah? Then silence. Then heavy footsteps running toward the basement door. The locks clanked. The door creaked open. Light poured in like a waterfall, blinding my eyes for a moment. And then I saw him. Marcus. He rushed in, dropped to his knees, and held me like a man who thought he'd lost everything. Oh my God. Sarah, what happened? Who did this to you? Clara stood behind him, her face full of shock and tears. I told you something was wrong, she whispered. I told you. But just as I tried to speak, another voice interrupted. Get away from her. It was Mr. James, standing at the top of the basement stairs. His face red with fury, his fists clenched. You don't understand what's going on. She's trying to destroy this family. Marcus stood up slowly, still shielding me behind him. Dad, you locked her in a basement. What are you even saying? She's manipulating you. Mr. James shouted. She came here for your money. She's playing you, son. That girl is poison. She needed to be taught a lesson. Marcus looked like someone had stabbed him. He stepped back and sat on the step, holding his head in his hands. I don't understand any of this. I wanted to speak, to tell Marcus everything, but I couldn't. I felt so weak, like I might collapse. My eyes fluttered and I think I passed out because the next thing I remember, I was lying in a hospital bed, with machines beeping softly beside me. Marcus was there, holding my hand. His eyes were red from crying. Clara sat nearby, clutching my bag. They gave you sleeping medication, Clara said gently. You were exhausted and dehydrated. But you're safe now. I turned to Marcus. Do you believe me? He swallowed hard. I don't know what to believe, Sarah. My dad. I've never seen him like that. And my mom, she says you imagine most of it. That you had some kind of breakdown after I left for Abuja. But I saw the chains. The bruises. I know something happened. I just don't understand why. The room fell quiet. Clara stood and pulled something out of her pocket. You need to see this, she said, handing Marcus her phone. It was a voice recording. Crackly but clear enough. If you tell my son, I swear I'll cancel this wedding and destroy you. Marcus froze. He played it again. And again. His hands trembled. He looked at me. How did you? I started recording once he started threatening me, I said quietly. I hid my phone under the wooden box. It kept recording. Clara nodded. She told me before you left. Said she felt something strange about your dad. She gave me a signal word to check on her if anything seemed off. When I didn't hear from her for 4 days, I knew something was wrong. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. My own father, he whispered. My own father. We thought that was the end. We thought the recording would bring justice, expose the truth. But that night, something even worse happened. Mr. James went to the police. And he filed a report, claiming that I had broken into the family house, tried to seduce him. And when he refused me, I attacked him and locked myself in the basement to frame him. He even showed them scratch marks on his arms, ones I never gave him. Just like that, everything flipped. The police came to the hospital. They didn't arrest me, but they said I was under investigation. They asked questions. Cold ones. Doubting ones. Clara was furious. How can they believe him? Marcus didn't speak. He just stared ahead. Something broke in him that day. Later that night, while Clara stepped out to buy food, Marcus sat beside me and said, Sarah, I love you. I still want to marry you. But this is bigger than me. Bigger than us. My father, he's connected. Powerful. He can ruin you, ruin me. If we fight him, we might lose everything. I stared at him, my voice trembling. So what are you saying? He held my hand, tears in his eyes. I need time. Just a little time. Let me talk to him. Let me try to settle this quietly. Please don't go to the press. Don't post the recording. Let me handle it as his son. I pulled my hand away. You want me to be silent? Just for now, he whispered. I turned away. I had found my strength once. But now, I would need to find it again. Because that night, as I lay alone in that hospital bed, I realized something terrifying. Mr. James wasn't done with me yet. That same night, while the nurses made their rounds and Clara slept curled up in the visitor's chair, I heard footsteps outside my hospital room door. Slow, heavy, purposeful. At first, I thought it was just the night staff, until I heard the handle turn. Click. The door creaked open. And there he was. Mr. James. Standing in the doorway in a black coat, holding a white envelope in one hand, and wearing the same cold smirk I remembered from the basement. I froze. He walked in calmly like he owned the place, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. If you scream, I'll make sure they say you're mentally unstable, he said flatly, his voice low and steady. I told you, Sarah. You should have kept quiet. Clara stirred slightly, but didn't wake up. He noticed. She's no threat, he whispered. But you? You're becoming a problem. I tried to reach for the nurse's button, but he quickly stepped forward and threw the envelope on my lap. I came to give you a choice, he said. Inside that envelope is a plane ticket. One way. To Ghana. There's also cash enough to start over. All you have to do is leave tonight. Disappear. Forget this wedding. Forget my son. Forget this family. My voice cracked. You're insane. He leaned down close. No, I'm powerful. There's a difference. Then he stood tall, fixed his coat, and looked at me like I was nothing. Take the offer. Or you'll wish you did. Trust me, the basement was just the beginning. With that he walked out, gently closing the door as if he had just delivered flowers. I lay there frozen. My heart was thudding like a hammer. I turned and stared at Clara. Should I wake her? Should I run? I opened the envelope. It was all there. Ticket. Money. A threatening note in perfect handwriting. This is your last chance. Leave or disappear forever. The next morning I told Marcus everything. He said nothing. His face looked like a battlefield, torn between truth and fear. I need time, he said again, and I knew then he was breaking inside. He still loved me, but the chains of his family were pulling him under. Clara was furious. Time? What else do you need? A knife to her throat. We have proof. A recording. A note. Let's go to the press. I nodded slowly. No. They both looked at me. I'm not going to the press, I said. Not yet. Clara's mouth fell open. Sarah, what are you saying? I looked at her, then at Marcus. I'm going to fight him. But I'm going to do it smartly. Quietly. I'm going to build something stronger than noise. I'm going to find every crack in his life. I'm going to destroy him from the inside. For the first time since the basement, I felt something stir inside me. Strength. Real deep, fire-breathing strength. I wasn't a scared girl anymore. I was a woman with a purpose. So I began my quiet war. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. Clara helped. We found one with a quiet office in Yaba. An older man named Mr. Edom, who used to work with anti-corruption agencies. I gave him everything I had, recordings, the note, stories, timelines. He said, this man, Mr. James, he's got enemies. We just have to find the right one. And we did. 3 weeks into the investigation, Mr. Edom called me in. He had a folder filled with documents, property fraud, falsified contracts, hidden accounts in his brother's name. There were even rumors about a missing housemaid from years ago. This man's been hiding filth for a long time, he said. We just need to make one smart move. But just when I was ready to release the bombshell, tragedy struck. Clara didn't show up to meet me one evening. Her phone was off. She had told me she was visiting her mother. The next morning I got the call. She had been in an accident. A hit and run. Her body was found by the roadside. My world shattered. I rushed to the morgue, crying, screaming, praying it was a mistake. But there she was. My best friend. Gone. Tears poured from my eyes as I stood over her lifeless body. Inununu. I felt like my chest had been ripped open. And then I saw it, folded tightly in her jacket pocket. A paper, crumpled and dirty. It was addressed to me. Sarah, if anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. You know who it is. Don't give up. Please keep fighting. For both of us. I collapsed right there on the floor. This was no accident. Mr. James had sent me a new message. Loud and clear. Next time it would be me. But what he didn't know was, I had already made my choice. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. And I wasn't giving up. I stood at Clara's funeral with a fire in my heart. A storm in my chest. That night, I walked into Marcus's house, stood before his entire family, and announced something that made everyone freeze. I'm not here to beg for your love. I'm here to tell you this. I have proof. I have everything. And the day I go public, your empire, Mr. James, will fall. He smiled coolly, sipping from a glass of wine. You think you're strong now. Let's see how long you last. I looked him in the eye, unblinking. I've already lasted longer than you expected. But I hadn't seen the worst yet. Because that very night, as I walked back to my apartment, it was already on fire. Flames. Orange, wild flames swallowing my apartment like a beast. I screamed. Help! Somebody help! Neighbors ran out in panic. Buckets. Water. Shouting. But it was too late. The fire had already taken over. My curtains exploded into ash, my books turned to dust, and everything I owned, letters, photos, childhood keepsakes, vanished in smoke. I stood there barefoot on the street, shivering even though the heat was blistering. And then I saw it, spray painted on the ground outside my door. Leave or burn with it. I fell to my knees. People around me tried to console me, but I couldn't hear them. My ears were ringing not from the fire but from rage. From grief. From the ghost of Clara and the smell of destruction. It was him. I didn't even need proof. I knew. This was Mr. James's warning shot. His way of saying, you might have survived the basement, but don't think you'll survive the war. Marcus rushed to the scene when he heard. He tried to hold me, but I pushed him away. I was done crying. Done shaking. Done hiding behind anyone's protection. I'm not leaving, I said. I know you're scared, but I'm not scared anymore. He stared at me in silence. That night I had no home to go back to. But I didn't sleep in fear. I stayed with Mrs. Iadil, Clara's mother. She held my hand and prayed with me. She told me stories about Clara when she was young, and we both cried together like broken mothers. But I didn't tell her everything. I didn't want to put her in danger too. The next morning I met with Mr. Edom. He handed me a small flash drive. This is it, he said. The files are encrypted, but if they get leaked, Mr. James won't just lose his company. He'll face a full investigation. The fraud, the fake charity work, even the missing domestic workers. I held it in my hand like it was gold. Then why do I feel so afraid? I asked. Because you're human, he said. But being brave doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you fight anyway. I nodded slowly. So I came up with a plan. One last move. A move he'd never see coming. I reached out to a powerful investigative journalist named Evelyn Moore. A woman who had brought down corrupt senators, exposed illegal hospitals, and never backed away from a fight. Clara once mentioned her name as a lioness with a pen. Evelyn met me in secret, in an old cafe behind the university campus. She had silver braids and eyes that didn't blink much. I've heard whispers about Mr. James, she said, sipping black coffee. But no one's been brave enough to go against him. Are you sure you're ready to do this? I slid the flash drive across the table. I was locked in a basement. My best friend is dead. My apartment was burned to the ground. I'm done being quiet. Evelyn nodded. Then let's give the devil some sunlight. We planned for 3 days. Every file would be reviewed, fact-checked, and published online with supporting evidence. Video, audio, bank records, testimonies. Clara's story. My voice recording. Everything. But just as the story was ready to be released, Evelyn disappeared. Her phone went off. Her office was ransacked. And no one had seen her for 24 hours. I felt my lungs close. I ran to Mr. Edom's office in tears. She's gone. They took her. I know, he said, already packing his files into a black bag. They found out too fast. We need to disappear too. Lay low. We're next. I stared at him. You're saying we give up? He looked at me slowly.
No.
I'm saying we adapt. That night I knew what I had to do. I dressed in black, wrote one final letter and left it with Mrs. Iadil. Then I went back to the mansion. Back to Mr. James's home. I had one goal, face him. One-on-one. I didn't care if I walked out of that place in chains again. I just needed him to know I wasn't afraid. The house was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. I slipped in through the kitchen door, which was strangely unlocked. And that's when I heard it. A voice upstairs. Two men shouting. One of them was Marcus. The other wasn't his father. I crept up slowly, my heart pounding. And what I saw froze me completely. Mr. James was on his knees, blood on his face. And standing over him was a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark, with a scar across his face and a gun in his hand. Marcus was shouting, "You said she'd be safe. You said no one would get hurt." The scar-faced man laughed. "Your father paid us to clean up his mess, but we don't do charity anymore." Then he turned to Mr. James. "Time to pay in full." And as he raised the gun, I screamed. The man looked up in shock. Marcus turned. And then, bang! A single gunshot tore through the air. The shot rang out like a thunderclap. I dropped to the floor, my hands over my ears, my heart ready to burst out of my chest. Silence followed. Then groaning. I looked up. Marcus was on the floor, clutching his side. Blood soaked through his shirt. His eyes were wide with pain but still alive. "Marcus!" I screamed, crawling toward him. Mr. James stumbled backward, using the wall for support. The scar-faced man looked stunned, like he hadn't meant to shoot Marcus. "You fool!" Mr. James shouted. I said, "No blood. That's my son." Scarface didn't blink. Too late. He pointed the gun at Mr. James again. "Pay me, or I'll finish what I started." "I'll get you the money," Mr. James begged. "Just let me get my phone." "Now," the man growled. "Cash. Not promises." I crawled to Marcus and pressed my hands against his wound. "Stay with me. Please stay with me." His lips moved. "Sarah, run." "I'm not leaving you," I whispered, tears spilling. "Not again." Scarface turned toward us, gun still raised. And that's when I made a decision. I stood up slowly, blood on my hands, shaking with rage and fear. "Shoot me," I said. "You want blood? You came for me anyway, right? Then do it. Let's end this." The man hesitated. Mr. James stared at me like I was insane. Then Scarface lowered the gun just slightly. "You're braver than I expected," he muttered. And suddenly red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Sirens screamed outside. Police. Someone had called them. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe a staff member. Maybe fate. Scarface cursed under his breath and bolted toward the back door. But as he ran down the hall, the front door burst open. Boom. Officers stormed in, guns raised. Down. On the floor. Scarface tried to shoot his way out, but didn't make it past the kitchen. 2 shots to his legs brought him down screaming. I rushed back to Marcus and shouted, "He needs an ambulance. Please." Officers surrounded us, confused, panicked, trying to make sense of the crime scene. In the chaos, Mr. James tried to slip away, but I pointed at him. He hired the hitman. He tried to kill me twice. He locked me in the basement. He's behind everything. They cuffed him on the spot. Even as they dragged him away, he glared at me with those same dead eyes. "You think you've won?" he hissed. I didn't answer. I just looked at Marcus, who was barely conscious, and whispered, "Hold on. Don't leave me." The next hours were a blur. Hospital lights, surgery, blood transfusions, and prayers whispered in corners. I didn't sleep. I sat outside the operating room, my clothes still stained with his blood, refusing to go home, refusing to eat. I had lost Clara. I wasn't going to lose Marcus too. After what felt like forever, the doctor stepped out. "He made it," he said gently. "The bullet missed the organs. He'll recover." I collapsed to the floor in tears. But this time, they were tears of relief. Days passed. The news exploded like wildfire. Respected businessman arrested in murder plot and domestic abuse case. Fiancé escapes basement captivity, tells her story. Audio voice notes and hidden files expose secret crimes. The story Evelyn Moore had been preparing? Her assistant found the files and published them after her disappearance. Turns out, Evelyn wasn't missing. She had gone into hiding after receiving threats, waiting for the right moment to release everything. It was everywhere: TV, Twitter, blogs, radio. People finally listened. Mr. James was denied bail. Scarface, real name Kelvin Apara, confessed everything under pressure, including other crimes that linked back to Mr. James's construction empire. Even Mrs. James was questioned. The entire house of lies crumbled. But through it all, I never left Marcus's side. He was quiet in the hospital, always looking out the window. One day he finally spoke. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner." I squeezed his hand. "You did in your own way." I let him control too much. I wanted to protect you, but I was too scared of him. "You're not him," I said gently. "You broke the chain. You took a bullet for me." He looked at me. "Do you still want to marry into this mess?" I smiled sadly. "Marcus, I didn't fall in love with your father. I fell in love with you." He closed his eyes, and for the first time in weeks, I saw peace on his face. But peace didn't last long. Because just 2 days later, someone slipped a note under the hospital door. One sentence. No name. Just, "The family never forgets." I stared at the note, cold running down my spine. There were more secrets. More people behind this. And they were watching. The note sat on the bedside table like a snake curled up in silence. "The family never forgets." I read it again and again, each time my heart pounding louder in my chest. I turned it over. No signature. No fingerprint. Just bold black letters stamped on thick, grainy paper. Marcus was asleep when I found it. I didn't wake him. I simply stepped out of the hospital room, holding the note like it was a piece of dynamite. I rushed to the security desk. "Who delivered this?" I asked the guard on duty. "Did anyone come by my room?" He looked confused. Checked the logs. Reviewed the hallway camera footage. But there was a gap. 2 minutes missing from the recording. "They must have tampered with it," he whispered. "Someone inside." Inside. That word echoed in my mind like thunder. Inside the hospital. Inside the police. Inside our lives. Mr. James might have been behind bars, but the roots of his power went deeper than I'd imagined. This wasn't over. I called Mr. Eatham. He came within the hour, eyes tired, coat stained from the rain. I handed him the note and he frowned deeply. "This is a warning," he said. "Someone is still loyal to him. Maybe family. Maybe one of his crooked business partners. We can't trust anyone right now. We have to move Marcus. Move him." I blinked. "He just came out of surgery." "I'll make the arrangements," he said, already dialing numbers. By nightfall, Marcus was relocated to a private, heavily guarded clinic outside Lagos. I rode in the ambulance beside him, clutching his hand tightly, peeking out the window at every turn, wondering if a car would follow. If a man with a scar would appear again. We made it safely. The clinic was small, quiet, with only 6 rooms. But each had its own security detail, and no visitors without my permission. For the first time in a while I could breathe. For a moment. But then the calls began. Blocked numbers. Voicemails with nothing but breathing on the other end. Texts saying, "We know where you are." I changed my SIM. I changed phones. But somehow they always found me. Edom warned, "These people have contacts in telecom. This is high-level stuff. You're not just dealing with a father-in-law anymore. This is organized." But I refused to hide. Instead, I launched my counterattack. Evelyn Moore, now back in public, contacted me for an exclusive interview. A televised one. She said, "You've already inspired thousands, Sarah. But if you speak out with your face, your voice, the whole world will watch. They won't be able to silence you anymore." I was afraid, but I agreed. The day of the interview, I wore Clara's favorite blue scarf. The one she used to wrap around her head like a crown whenever she said, "Today, I feel like a queen." I walked into the studio with a camera crew waiting, lights burning hot, microphones clipped to my collar. Evelyn began. "Sarah, can you tell us in your own words, what happened to you?" And I told it. All of it. The basement. The threats. The envelope. The burning apartment. The gunshot. Clara's death. The note. I wept on camera. But I didn't break. When the interview aired 2 nights later, it went viral. Millions watched. Tweets exploded. Hashtags trended across Nigeria and beyond. /hashtag justice for Sarah. /hashtag Clara's voice. /hashtag expose James Empire. More survivors came forward. Former employees of Mr. James's companies. A teenage housemaid. A security guard. Even a cousin who had been cut off for knowing too much. Their stories matched mine. Patterns of abuse, intimidation, threats, hush money. With each voice added, the case against Mr. James grew stronger. Until he tried to end it all. News broke that Mr. James had attempted to take his own life in prison after learning that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, was preparing to seize all his properties. But he survived. And that's when everything changed. His wife turned on him. Mrs. James, the same woman who once told me to stay silent, went on national TV and admitted that she had known about her husband's crimes for years, that she had protected him out of fear, that she had lied for him, helped cover his tracks, and even watched as he harmed others. But now she was ready to talk. The trial was set. Mr. James would face 15 counts, fraud, abuse, conspiracy, attempted murder, and more. But the night before the trial began, the power went out. In the clinic. At midnight. All the lights gone. Total darkness. I stood up, heart racing, whispering, "No, no, not now." The emergency backup lights flickered on. Then I heard it. Footsteps. In the hallway. Slow. Getting closer. I grabbed a metal tray from beside Marcus's bed. He was asleep, still healing. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A shadow moved under the door crack. Then, bang, bang. The door rattled hard, as if someone was trying to break it down. I raised the tray like a weapon, and the door swung open. I don't know how long I sat there on the cold basement floor, trembling and holding my breath. The moment my father-in-law left, I crawled to the farthest corner and wept like a child. My hands were bruised from beating the door. My voice was hoarse. My heart was broken. But I was not defeated. I don't know what changed in me that day. Maybe it was the pain. Maybe it was the humiliation. Or maybe it was the realization that no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. I started watching his movements, listening to how many footsteps he took, noting when he left the house. I counted his meals. I smelled his cologne through the crack under the basement door. Every day, I whispered to myself, "He doesn't own me. He will not win." One night, I heard the front door slam. Then silence. No television. No footsteps. No creaking. I waited a whole hour. 2. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. It was now or never. I searched the basement for anything I could use. That was when I found an old rusty pipe leaning behind the water heater. I held it in my hand like a weapon. With shaky arms, I aimed it at the doorknob and hit it over and over again. It made a horrible noise. I kept going. I didn't care if I got caught. Then I heard something. Not footsteps. A voice. It was a woman. "Hello." I froze. Again the voice. "Is someone in there?" My heart leapt. "Please help me." I shouted. "He locked me in here." She gasped and ran upstairs. I panicked. What if she tells him? What if he comes back before she helps? But then a few minutes later I heard banging at the door. "Step back," someone shouted. I stepped away just as the basement door burst open. A man and the woman from earlier stood there. He looked like a neighbor. She looked horrified. The woman ran to me and threw a blanket around my shoulders. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I nodded weakly, eyes full of tears. The man helped me up the stairs and into the living room. I hadn't seen sunlight in what felt like days. But just as I stepped into the open, My father-in-law stormed through the front door. His eyes widened when he saw me. How did you?" he bellowed. The neighbor stepped between us. "Back off," he warned. "We're calling the police." But instead of backing down, my father-in-law reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small and shiny. A blade. He charged. Everything happened in a blur. He came at us with that knife, eyes wild like an animal. The neighbor man shoved me behind him and tried to block the attack, but my father-in-law slashed blindly, screaming, "She belongs to me. She's mine." The knife grazed the neighbor's arm. Blood gushed instantly. The woman screamed. I froze, heart pounding, until I saw the neighbor stumble. That's when I grabbed the metal pipe I had used to break the basement door and, without thinking, I swung it as hard as I could. Clang! It hit his wrist. The knife flew out of his hand and landed with a dull thud on the carpet. He howled and fell to the ground, clutching his arm. The woman ran outside, shouting for help. A dog barked somewhere nearby. Then I heard sirens in the distance. Finally, when the police arrived, they kicked open the front door and swarmed the living room. My father-in-law was still writhing on the floor. I backed away from him, tears running down my face, pointing. "That's him. He locked me in the basement. He beat me. He starved me. He abused me." The officers rushed to cuff him, and though he kicked and cursed, they subdued him quickly. The paramedics arrived moments later and bandaged the neighbor's arm. They checked me too. I had bruises everywhere, arms, face, ribs, but I didn't feel the pain anymore. I felt freedom. As they led him out in handcuffs, my father-in-law locked eyes with me. He spat on the ground and hissed, "You ruined everything." But he was wrong. He had already ruined everything. I was just now learning how to piece myself back together. The officers asked if I had anywhere safe to go. I didn't. My parents were long gone. My siblings scattered. But the woman, the neighbor, took my hand and said, "She'll stay with me." And that night I slept in a clean bed under a warm blanket, with the door open and the lights on. Just in case. I was free but far from healed. Because the worst part of my story was not over yet. The police would soon discover something buried beneath the basement floor. I woke up the next morning in a soft bed, sunlight peeking through the curtains. For a moment I thought it was all a dream, until I turned my neck and winced in pain. The bruises, the cuts, the memories. No, it was real. The woman brought me warm tea and soft bread. She sat quietly, letting me eat in peace. Then the police came back. They wanted to ask questions. Hard questions. They wanted details of what my father-in-law did to me, and for how long. I told them everything. The beatings. The days without food. The chains. The insults. The time he tied me up and left me in the dark, telling me that no one would ever come for me. They wrote down every word, their eyes wide with disbelief, yet full of sympathy. Then one of them said something strange. "We found something in the basement." I felt my stomach turn. They asked me if I ever saw him digging or doing anything suspicious down there. I said no. I was usually tied up in the dark corner. I didn't even know what day it was, most of the time. Then they told me. They found bones. Human bones. Under the basement floor, beneath the dirty carpet and hidden tiles, buried in the soil. Someone was there. I gasped. My hands began to shake. "Whose bones?" I asked, though I didn't want to know. They said they were still testing, but it looked like the remains belonged to a woman, and from the age and size, possibly my aunt. His first wife. Suddenly everything made sense. The way no one ever talked about her. How he always claimed she ran away. How angry he became whenever her name was mentioned. Tears filled my eyes. He had done this before. I was not the first, but I would be the last. Because now the truth was out, and justice had only just begun. That same evening, as the news of the basement bones hit the headlines, everything changed. My father-in-law's face was all over the TV. Neighbors gathered outside his compound, whispering, pointing, shouting. Some wept. Others screamed curses. He was no longer just a monster to me. He was a murderer to the world. The police kept him in custody, and the investigation deepened. They brought in forensic experts, and after days of testing it was confirmed. The bones belonged to Margaret Hill, his late wife, my fiancé's mother. A woman who disappeared without a trace nearly 20 years ago. He had told everyone she packed her things and ran off with a younger man. People believed him. Even Michael believed him. Until now. Michael had been quiet for days. He didn't call. He didn't text. I understood. The weight of betrayal is heavy, especially when it comes from blood. But one morning, he walked into the safe house where I was staying. His eyes were red, tired. His face pale. But his voice soft, gentle. "I'm sorry, Anna." Tears spilled from my eyes the moment he said my name. "I'm so sorry, I didn't believe you at first. I thought he was a strict man, yes, but not this." His voice cracked. We cried together. For all we had lost. For what we could never get back. "I still love you," he said, holding my hand. "But I understand if you don't want to continue with the wedding. I wouldn't blame you." That question hung in the air like fog. Did I still want to marry him? Could I separate the man from his father? Could I erase the trauma that lived under my skin, etched in every scar? I didn't have the answer yet. But I knew one thing for sure. I survived. Not just the bruises and pain. I survived the silence. I survived the threats. I found my voice. And I was never going to lose it again. A week later, my father-in-law was officially charged with multiple crimes: kidnapping, assault, attempted murder, homicide. The judge denied him bail. But what shocked everyone most was the diary they found in a metal box under the floorboards of his bedroom. It was his confession, written in his own hand, page after page, full of rage, lies, and twisted pride. He had kept track of everything: what he did to Margaret, how he planned it, and how he buried her in the basement the same day he reported her missing. He even mentioned me. He wrote about locking me up, wanting to tame me before I married his son. He said I was too outspoken, too bold for a woman. He wanted to teach me a lesson. But the only lesson that echoed through the court when the diary was read out loud was: silence empowers monsters. And monsters thrive when no one speaks up. After the trial, I stood outside the courthouse. Cameras flashing. Reporters asking questions. People shouting my name. But I wasn't interested in fame. I wanted peace. I looked into the lens of one camera and said, to every girl out there who's afraid to speak up, I was afraid too. But silence almost killed me. Don't wait. Tell someone. Scream. Run. Break down that door. Because your voice can save your life. The video went viral. Girls wrote me letters from all over the country. Survivors. Fighters. Women who had been locked in their own silent basements. And Michael? We decided to take a break. Not because we didn't love each other, but because we needed to heal, separately. He needed to understand who his father truly was. And I needed to remember who I truly was, before the trauma. It's been 2 years now. I run a foundation that helps girls escape abusive homes. I speak at schools. I mentor young women. And every time I walk into a room, I remember that dark, cold basement. And the voice that once trembled in fear now says proudly, I found my strength.